Testing, 1, 2, 3, sound check. Okay. Hi folks, this is Steve at Little Treasury, resuming my live broadcast. Seems I can only get to about once a week, and so here I am again. And we have a mixed show for you today. I hope some of you will enjoy it. I'd like to lead off with a little nice video clip, and here we go. I'm not getting a sound of this, but I'll tell you what we have here. This is a gentleman, Coach Bob, who showed up on our doorstep last week, and he drove down from Long Island, which is several hundred miles, about 225 miles, to visit our store, and he picked up the Grand Seiko SBGK005, the Craig watch, the titanium diver. So he's a follower and learned about us online through Craig's channel here, and it's always great to have you folks show up. Getting calls about every day, and it's a really nice thing to have that experience. So this seems to be quite a viable medium, it seems. So I appreciate it very much that people are making the effort to get over here and to see us. And Coach Bob, if you're watching, thank you for coming in, and I hope you're enjoying your very accurate SBGA 231 and wear it in health. So with that, I see Dave Williams is here. Hi. And Dan Radke. Hi, a new face to me anyway. And today I want to talk a bit about Bremont Watches. And this is a brand that we have carried since 2012. And I'm going to bring up some images. Here we go. So back in 2012, we brought on Bremont Watches. I met the Bremont team in Las Vegas at the Couture Time show, and we had a discussion. Had my eye on the brand for a while, and we met on a mutual agreeable basis about the territory we would cover. I'm here in the picture with Nick English on the left and Mike Pearson, our rep at the time, on the right, the much storied Mike Pearson. Some of you must have met him. He's been all over. So okay, I guess you did hear the speech on the Coach Bob thing, and I see someone said, can't hear you. I hope you're hearing me now as well. Anyhow, we brought on Bremont, and it's been a happy experience for us ever since. I want to talk a bit about the brand, the people, our experience, and individual watches for a while, and I hope you have some questions about it as well. So this brand, Bremont, was started in about the year 2000 by the English brothers, Giles and Nick English. Picture of Nick here with me. And their story is a pretty interesting one. It's available on their website. I'm not going to recount the whole background, but they came out of doing other things and purposefully decided to start a watch brand that would bring watchmaking back to England. And they are based in England and in Henley in Oxfordshire. So disclosure, this is my daily wear. This is the Alt1-C chronograph, black. Very fine watch for me. It's 43 millimeters. It's not the thinnest piece in the collection, but I'm a good-sized person, and it suits me well. And it's extremely rugged. The steel is reputed to be 5 times harder than Rolex steel. So, and it's shown that to me in the last 4 years or so. I've been wearing it. I bang it into our showcases and our door jams quite regularly. And as you can see, it's this is a recent shot. It's pretty much eye clean and keeps good time for me. So it's a watch that I like. So, okay, I see the volume is better. Thank you, David. And, okay, someone's watch lounge liking the new white dial Supermarine, and Thomas Burnett, the MB2. We'll be talking about those in a little bit as well. So, moving on, here is me with Giles English. This is back in an event in Basel World. And we've met these folks all over the world, it seems, in many venues. And this is a party they were having atop the hotel next to the main part of the Basel World display. It was a Ramada at the time. It's been renamed to something else. So both of these gentlemen, Nick and Giles, extremely personable. They know many of our customers by name. And they're just delightful gentlemen, and they're the real deal, in my opinion. And another shot, having a good time at this cocktail party, indeed. And the brand is very involved in partnerships. It's one of their hallmarks. Here's a shot of a Norton motorcycle. They came out with a limited edition Norton watch some years ago, which has become a very collectible item. Again, a lot of their partnering is with British brands, and they're usually pretty meaningful partnerships with legs that sometimes we don't see with other brands that just do what I would call branding partnerships only. So over the years, further, we've done a lot of events with the brand, and here we are in Washington, D.C. at the Ritz-Carlton. We had an epic event there about 4 years ago. Over 100 people attended from all over, and it was a gala evening. We took over the essentially the lobby and the lounge and the VIP center, and Nick there did a presentation for everyone. So this was Little Treasury and Bremont in D.C., and we've been out there with them on some other occasions as well. And here are some of the folks who came in for that event, with Nick third from the left, and some of our really good customers along with them. So these co-owners of the company do attract their customers who are eager to meet them and to hear their story. And I think it's one of the key characteristics of the brand, that the accessibility of the ownership, and something we appreciate, and obviously a lot of the people who collect their watches do as well. So here's another venue where we went off with Bremont. This is in front of Buckingham Palace. This was another Alt1-C that I own, the rose gold version, very elegant piece. And we were over there for an event that they held in the, I'm trying to remember the name of the museum, but it's sort of their Smithsonian. And they had an event launching a special edition watch called the Wright Flyer, which I'll talk about a bit. But this was a gala tuxedo black tie event where they took over the whole top floor of the museum. Museum of Industry, I believe, is what it is properly called. And we had a lot of luminaries there, and actually several of my customers traveled to London as well and attended that event. And as you can see, stunning venue. And here are the watches that were being presented. These are the Wright Flyers in white gold, rose gold, and stainless steel. And the Wright Flyer is, and here's the back of the case, incorporated a piece of the muslin from the first flight. And you can see that in the little tan section between Wright and Flyer on the rotor. And a very beautiful piece. It actually sold very well. It was done in partnership with the Wright Brothers Foundation. The English brothers were able to obtain about a square foot of this muslin, and in turn donated a portion of the proceeds of the sales of the watches to the foundation. And the Wright brothers' great niece, I believe it was actually there as part of the presentation. And the decorated rotor, the incorporation of the propeller, and a lot of the other decorations are typical of their limited editions. And this sold very well, in fact, here in the U.S. So this is one of the few partnerships that involved the U.S. rather than U.K. Here's the dial of the Wright Flyer, and close-up of that piece of muslin from the wing of the first flight plane. So pretty neat. It's typical of the kinds of things they do, where they weave historical items into the timepieces. And in almost all cases, there's a charitable component where they're supporting the foundation or group that they're working with. So it's a nice charitable gesture on their part. So Luis asked me to ask Michael about his S501. He's waiting impatiently for it. I will, if I see Mike, I will definitely do that, Luis. Okay. So moving on a little further, here's another partnership. This is Ian Callum, the designer for Jaguar cars, and so Jaguar being a British brand, naturally it makes a good partnership. They've done about 4 variations of Jaguar watches, and here's one of them. And Ian Callum, as I understand it, collaborates with the English brothers directly in terms of the design. And again, these are liked pretty well by the folks who own Jaguars, and even some that don't. So another collaboration piece. And further, they were a sponsor of the America's Cup in 2016, I believe. I might have the year wrong. This is in their boutique on Madison Avenue, and that's a point I want to make, that they do have company-owned boutiques in New York, and 2 or maybe 3 now in London. And they're pretty interesting places to visit. They're full of British memorabilia, and give you a great sense of the brand. So here I am with Giles and the America's Cup behind us, and we had the good fortune to go with them to Bermuda to the first race in the series that they were sponsors. And I'm here with Nick on a catamaran that we were on for the day, watching the races. And here's one of the America's Cup pieces. I think they're generally all sold out, but very well received by um, the customers. And I see Thomas Bremont are big on this sort of gimmick, aren't they? They have watches with bits of planes and ships inside them. Yes, they do, and there are a lot of people who resonate to these quote gimmicks, but there's always a little bit of authenticity in them, I would say, and so I think they do a good job with it. And here's one of the pieces from the America's Cup series. They had a countdown timer, chronograph, beautifully done. That's a sapphire bezel on there, and they sold out rather quickly as well. And here's another version of the Regatta in 18 karat gold. And changing up a bit, I want to talk about these limited editions, and the ones I've shown you are for the most part in one of the annual series of limited pieces they do. This is the first one, the EP-120, commemorating the EP-120 plane, and this is considered perhaps the most collectible of Bremont watches. And this is a point I want to make. Here's a brand started in about 2000, released their first watch in 2005, and a fair number of these limited editions have appreciated substantially. This piece is before our time. I'm guessing 2011, 2010. We started in 2012. And we acquired one from a customer pre-owned, and we were able to sell this for $20,000. And I believe that when it was first issued, it was in the $10,000 range. So for those of you who talk frequently about only Rolex has appreciation, I think this is a fairly amazing story that really a niche brand that sometimes takes a lot of heat in the collector sphere does manage to put out some pieces that have high collectability. And when we had this in the store, people would come and say, "Oh, wow, you have the EP-120," and they just were very thrilled to be able to see it. So. And here's a picture of the dial and the open case back with the rotor in the form of a propeller. So that's what that is. And you can see it's a limited edition of 120 pieces appropriately. Okay. And here's another, I'm switching gears a little bit here, but this also does tie into another limited edition piece they put out. We were fortunate enough to visit, we visited their facilities several times, and as I said, the headquarters is in Henley in Oxfordshire, and up north, I believe, from there, about an hour's drive, is Silverstone, and they have another facility up there, and that's probably being relocated back to Henley, though. And they took advantage of the availability of skilled machinists from the many automotive facilities up in Silverstone to hire people to work on their watches. And here in their facility in Silverstone, they make their own cases, and they are not stamped. They are actually machined, and we were quite amazed actually at the extensive processes they go through. It's almost an overnight process machining these case tops overnight, actually, on these automated machines from billets of steel. Once they're finished with the machining process and they're polished, they go to the Rolls-Royce turbine factory and get treated so that they develop this hardness, which is said to be 5 times harder than Rolex steel. So here's one of the machines at work, and here's again part of the process with water jets cooling it. So here's a characteristic of Bremont. They're using, for the most part, other people's movements, modified, as you can see, with their own rotors, their own decoration, and their main contribution is the manufacture now of their cases. And so, not bad. So as part of this trip, we were invited up to an airplane museum, and this was another black tie affair, and it took place in a hangar, and we were shown this plane that won the prize in the 1930s of a race from London to Australia, and it's purpose-built. Apparently, only 1 or 2 people can fly the thing. It's got a big nose. It's very heavy when loaded with fuel, and it is very tricky to land because of that long nose that blocks the pilot's vision, we're told. So here I am having my drink, and this is we're not knowing what's going on at the moment, except for we're been brought over to this Shuttleworth Airport Museum, and this is what was revealed. It's the DH-88, which is the model of the plane they were commemorating, and this is in rose gold, and case back, again, typical Bremont decoration. Now, folks, don't go crazy over this and say, oh, they're just gimmicky, but we all love the special rotors on the Grand Seikos, don't we now? So Bremont's been doing this for years as well. And the wood part of the rotor there is part of the undercarriage of the original DH-88. And there's only one example of this plane in existence. So that's incorporated into, when they refurbished the plane, Bremont got their hands on the material and incorporated it into their rotor. So it's a very nice piece. It was in steel and rose gold and white gold as well. And here's the plane, and to our surprise, they rolled it out of the hangar right in front of us and turned it around, cranked it up, and flew it. And as well as that, they had a Mach dogfight between a German warplane and a Mustang that still flew. And this is at the Shuttleworth Air Museum, which, if you're ever in the UK and want to see a fascinating air museum, that would be it. So, yes, I see. Chi-Town, California. Only 2 men can pull off a wristwatch with black tie. James Bond and Steve. Really, it's Steve and James Bond, but I forgive you. Okay. So, and someone's missing the Cowgirls live. Yeah, that's on another channel. Not tonight. So, okay. So, moving on a bit. This is perhaps the iconic Bremont piece. It's the MB2, and MB stands for Martin Baker, And Martin Baker is the manufacturer of, it's said to be about 80% of the ejection seats for fighter planes throughout the world. And Martin Baker has a factory not too far from Bremont, and so this is a partnership. And the watch is designed to withstand ejection from in an ejection seat, and in fact it has been tested to do so. So it's sometimes said that this story is apocryphal. Well, my wife and I can verify that it's true. We will show you in a minute. I just want to talk a bit about the construction of the watch. So the 4 o'clock crown operates the internal rotating bezel, and I have an example I can show you later. The upper crown, of course, sets the time and date. And the watch has an anodized aluminum piece in the middle, which is can be either red or orange or British racing green or anthracite, and some variants blue. And you can only get the red if you have actually ejected and survived from a fighter jet. We actually have, and to do so, you really have to have full documentation. There's a record kept of everyone who is ejected in a Martin Baker seat, and there's quite a bit of paperwork that needs to be completed. We have 2 customers actually who have the red bezel, or not with the red piece in their MB2. So it's quite an accomplishment, and it's sort of a thrill to see the people with that. So, and let's see. Okay, so moving on. Here's me at the Martin Baker factory, and the background there is all the names of people who, the 7,000 plus people who have ejected. It's really a neat experience to see that, and they're very meticulous in terms of maintaining this wall. And here's a little detail of it. And I tried to find a couple of our customers' names, but there are just too many names to track down while we're there. So very nice touch. And trying to move this to the next. Okay, here we go. This is Mr. Martin, and he gave us a talk on how he likes to torture the watches. And he's actually a bit of a tough guy who loves to essentially try to break the Bremont watches in these trials. And he perversely insists on keeping the watches he tests. And I think the Bremont folks would like them back, and he says no way. And it's fairly amusing to see it. This is actually the first watch that was tested, and I think it never survived as a current model in the lineup, but it was said that this was tested 12 times and still keeps decent time. And now, moving on a bit from that, this is what's going on now and recently with Bremont. They have abandoned participation in Baselworld for the past several years, and they had an event in London several years ago, and now have, for the U.S. market, have moved to New York. This is in the Lower East Side in a gorgeous townhouse, and this is in January of this year, where they bring in dealers and the watch press and whatever, and show the new models. So this is what they're up to. Here I am with Nick English, And that's it for my little slideshow. So getting back to reality. So this is our experience with the brand. So a lot of it is has to do with the events, the places we've been with them. They're coming to the store, and it's not just us as the retailer, but a lot of our clients who fancy Bremont watches have participated as well. And it's something that we enjoy as dealers in the smaller brands, where we can bring in the owners or the designers and have our clients participate and experience something with them. And I have to also say that I very much admire the many philanthropic things that the brand has done with their partnerships. And there's much more. There's one especially worth mentioning because it was so successful, and it was a watch called the Code Breaker that commemorated the Bletchley Park Code Breakers, and it was extremely successful here. We're near NSA and have many people who are in the business as customers, and we sold quite a few of these pieces that incorporated some material from the hut where they broke the Enigma code from the flooring. It was built into the rotor, and also had limited edition numbers cut from some of the last remaining cards, computer cards that they used when they didn't have fully operational computers, and they had to use punch cards. So that was a pretty exciting piece for us, and then part of the proceeds were donated to the Bletchley Park facility to help support them. So that's that. Okay, so someone's changing gears here. Booswer, B-U-W-S-U-R, Booser. Steve is a 34 millimeter Rolex too small for a man. Well, not for a small man, so I would say. So, but I'm no expert in 34 millimeter Rolexes. So, but I will show you a 43 millimeter. Bremont, and I'm going to show a few of their pieces live. And this is a dive watch with a sapphire bezel, and it is a beautiful piece. Now, as you can see, fairly thick. Bremont watches are not known for their slimness, and show you the rotor. And this piece is $59.95, and it is called the Waterman. So pretty nice blue and white motif with a little bit of red in there. And bring up another piece. This is a limited edition piece. I think there are very few of these left at present. Got to drill in to get this in better focus. Sorry about that. There we go. Again, 43 millimeters. This is designed to withstand extreme cold, and the gentleman who walked across or have skied across the Antarctic wore this, and so again another Bremont partnership that they organized. Sorry for the focus issues. Okay. And our Greek friend is asking me if I am carrying regular Seiko too. That's an interesting question, and it depends on what you mean by regular Seiko. So we are dealers of Seiko Lux, and that includes the higher end Prospecs and the Presages, and we do not carry the lower end pieces. We can get them, but they're not in our stock. So that's the answer to that one. So let's look at another one. Here is the current iteration of the Martin Baker, and this is the MB3, and it has, as you can see, the second hand has an orange and black counterbalance, which is actually a representation of the pull cord on the ejection seats. So they all have that, but it shows up very nicely against this white dial. And in the triangle there, it says danger. And this is different from the others in that it has a titanium barrel, not an anodized aluminum. And so it's a very pretty limited edition GMT. Again, 43 millimeters. That's been sort of the anchor size of Bremonts, and until they've gotten down to some 40 millimeters, which I'll show you in a minute. But quite a pretty piece. Okay, so switching over, here's a 40 millimeter piece, a Solo, and there's a whole series of watches in the Solo range. And this has a beautiful blue bezel, pristine white dial, very nice piece, very wearable, and it's on their Temple Island rubber strap, which is designed to resemble calf to a certain degree, and is extremely comfortable, and the people who have it really like it. So we have these as add-on straps as well. So another Solo with a black dial, Solo style rather. This is the AIRCO Mach 1, so aviator style piece, 40 millimeters on a nice brown leather strap. And here we have this year's limited edition, and this commemorates the Concorde, and it has a very interesting movement And if I can get the reflection off of it, you can see that part of the bridge is actually shaped like the Concorde plane. And this is what I would call a bespoke movement. I believe it's done by La Perret for Bremont to their design. So, interesting limited edition piece. Again, black barrel, typical Bremont, 43 millimeters, rose gold. And I think I'll show you the last piece. And this is a limited edition of perhaps 5 years ago. And along with the EP-120 is considered extremely collectible. And that's the P-51. Commemorates the Mustang P-51. And it's got a beautiful rotor also in the form of a propeller. And this is available. And if you're interested, give me a call. Very attractive piece. So that's going to wind it up for the Bremont discussion. And I welcome any questions or comments on it. And David Williams asked about that, called the Endurance. Yes, David, that is the Endurance. It's a beautiful piece, and I think there are very few of these new left in the market. So if you're interested, give me a buzz. And it's on this orange NATO, but it can be fit with many other choices as well. It's titanium. A titanium bracelet will fit on this. They have that as well. Okay. So I wanted to touch base on Grand Seiko a little bit, and I see I'm out of focus here. I want to remind everybody about this piece, the SBGK005. And notoriously hard to photograph or show. And this is the manual wind spring drive piece with the Mount Iwate dial. It just got a pretty raving review in Hodinkee, extensive review. And I think it's been overlooked a bit by the Grand Seiko followers. We have several pieces here in the store. We just sold one to a customer visiting from Cambodia who's posted over there, and he picked it up today in the store. If you're interested in a thin dress watch and extremely elegant spring drive, manual wind, 72-hour power reserve, I think you ought to take a look. So, and this is with a beautiful crocodile strap, very lustrous, shiny finish, and deployant clasp. Highly recommended to take a look if you're in the market for this this type of watch. And I think with the current coverage, that's going to be have a wake-up call. And our Greek friend says, this is my favorite Grand Seiko. Well, have you decided to acquire one yet? And, Booser says, don't rest it on the crown. Now, I have watchmakers who've been in the store who insist we rest it on the crown. So maybe you could explain what your thinking is there. Okay. And air-toed rhubarb, hi. Are there any Grand Seikos with a form factor around the size of a 36 millimeter Datejust? So let's take a measure here. You know, this is going to be 39. There are some smaller. I think we've got a 37 in the pack somewhere. I don't have that in my head at the moment. This actually wears fairly small. As you can see, very short lugs, very compact to the main case. And one other Grand Seiko I wanted to roll out. It's coming up. Okay, this is going to be another piece in the series of quartz GMTs, and this was sort of an unannounced piece that has come out, and it is got the smooth bezel. It has the GMT 24-hour indicators on the chapter ring, and I don't think you can see that with my lighting. At least I can't see it on my monitor. And there are little quartz symbols very subtly all over the dial. It's a very striking piece, and the blue is just gorgeous. And interestingly, this lists for $200 less than the SBGN 003 and 005, so it's an even $3,000 for very beautiful piece. We have several of these in stock. I think they're going to go pretty quickly. Reminding everybody, I do have one SBGN 007. It's the last one. And we just got in another SBGN 003. So these quartz pieces are coming in, flying out. There's a little bit of a lead time to reacquire them from Grand Seiko. So I think Craig's suggestion that grab them now, things are going to be sold out. We are starting to see those backlogs, I guess, as the brand increases in popularity, and also they're increasing the number of doors in the country, so there's more exposure as well. So certainly we're just seeing just almost on a weekly basis a pretty dramatic increase in interest. So David Williams says that is an elegant looking GMT. It is indeed. It's a beautiful piece. And if you don't need the markers on the bezel, the 24-hour markers, this is a great piece. And I'm not sure you can see that the markers on the dial of the quartz logo. Yeah, I just can't quite get it out to you. I have a light that might make that better. Still iffy. Okay. Yeah, Our Greek friend says the polishing is so even and clear. You can see my reflection. Yeah, it is amazing. The job they do with that, the Zaratsu polishing is astounding. And sometimes makes the watches very difficult to photograph because you end up with a picture of a lens and a nose hanging over it when you're doing that. So, okay. Let's see now. Getting ready to wind it up unless there are any questions. I see the last time I sort of popped off while some questions were in the pipeline. So if you have anything or comment, get them up there because we're about to disappear and go back to work. Everybody wants me out there meeting customers, and I say, no, I'm on the air with Craig's group. So here's the last piece, just a reminder, still in the store. Got this beautiful Sea Dweller, and needs a little love. And if you're in the market for a nice Sea Dweller without very recent, without the Cyclops, and it's here, box papers, the whole 9 yards, warranty left. Let's make a deal. So, okay. So I've gotten back on this week. If I'm lucky, I can jump back on again. But we've been extremely busy lately, and it's difficult to do it. So, again, I appreciate all the calls and the visits we're getting from the folks who follow this channel. It seems like there are a lot more people out there than jump in to make a comment. You might want to join in. I think it's a bit of fun. And with that, okay, here's Boussoir. Heard you could damage the stem by putting too much pressure on it, especially at an angle such as was been resting on the crown. Okay. When it's closed down and it's on the cushion mat I have it on, probably not. Again, I've been admonished just to go the other direction as well. So it's probably like are watch winders good for a watch? It's probably the same question in some ways. It depends upon how you look at it. So, but thanks for the observation. And okay, Dave, thank you too for taking the time and listening. So always open to suggestions for follow-up shows, and as usual, enjoy it very much. So I am going to sign off and go back on duty, and thanks again.